Dare we open Pandora's mystic box?
To every generation, a slayer is born, except this time there were 6.
This is the dimension of imagination. You are entering the mystic zone.
Do you ladies see that aura? Something wonderful this way comes.
Welcome to the Mystic Order Podcast. We're the Mystic Order of East Alabama fiction writers, and I'm Mystic Gail, the Mystic Queen.
I'm Mystic Marion. I'm the dog whisperer mystic.
I'm Mystic Margie. I'm the illuminator mystic.
And today, our subject is art, and because of that subject, we've invited an artist, Terry Rodriguez, who also lives in the same town as the other mystics, Auburn, Alabama. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're so glad to have you here, and of course, we want to start off talking about your art. All the other mystics also are artists of a sort, and some of us are real artists, and some of us just do it for a hobby. But let's start with Terry. And Terry, tell us about your, have you had a show lately?
I have. I was very pleased to be invited by the Epiphany Episcopal Church in Atlanta to have a show. And friend of a friend sort of thing. And so I put together 24 pieces and took it up there in my handy-dandy Prius with my friend Sandra, and we hung the show, and it looked wonderful. There was a great space, and the show was up for over a month, and I went up there on a Sunday, and between services had a gallery talk and talked about my work.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And it's called Epiphany
Episcopal Church.
I love that name. I'm forever having
rolls
an
off the
epiphany.
tongue. Mm-hmm.
And where in Atlanta is that?
It's on Ponce de Leon.
Okay.
Yes, which I know is a long
But we
road.
missed it.
Mm-hmm.
We hated to miss it, but
You can come by my house anytime, Gail. You know
and
that.
see pictures.
And see art.
I
It's
have a
hanging all over
question.
the place.
For Terry,
Yes.
were the pieces in this show, were they religious themed? Did you have...
in fact, I had a few pieces that had that sort of bent. There's one that sort of looks like, and it's called Illumination, and it actually has some religious imagery in it, although that's not what it's about exactly. So I had maybe 3 or 4 pieces that I hoped would appeal to the Episcopalian in the audience as well as the artist.
Could you kind of describe your work? Are you a painter or...
I am a mixed media artist. In the last few years, I've been doing mostly what we call assemblage, where I combine objects and painting and various approaches to putting things on the page. And so it's very interesting. I like it. It's what I like to do.
Well, that's my art. I call it found object art. Mm-hmm. And the way I started with found object art is when I was doing estate sales. At the end, there'd be all these old pictures, and the family did not know who these people were. Some of the old pictures were actually of dead people, which they would put in their Jenny Lynn beds all dressed up and take a picture of them because that was the only picture ever taken. But I haven't used any of those in my art. They're quite... people really like to buy those pictures. Why, I don't know. But that's how I started out. And then I had a bunch of broken clocks. So the next thing I knew, I was putting objects in the clocks. And that's basically my art.
Well, I have friends bring me things. When I first started, I've been a painter. I've worked in abstraction and stuff. One day I brought home a brake pad that I found on the street walking home, and that started me on using found objects. And now, not only do I bring home objects, but friends give me things like some friends whose parents had a motel in Texas for 30 years, and their parents died, and she gave me a giant jar of keys that people had left over the years, like a 1956 Mercury key. Oh, I don't know. It was some little town in Texas.
That'd be a great name for one of your pieces, is the name of the hotel.
Yes, good idea, Gail.
Well, Marion, what's your art?
Well, in the past, I did hand-tinted photography. When I was married to Juan Carcache, an artist, we had a darkroom in the house, and I would take black and white.
Darkroom?
Yes, we did. We developed our own.
To develop pictures.
Right, we developed our own film and printed our own our own photographs, and I then would hand tint the photographs. The reason I don't do that anymore is that when digital cameras took over, the photo surface that I need disappeared, and the people who do have it won't sell it
Because they're using
it for their own. There are other ways that you can hand tint, but I don't like the end product as well as I did with the paper that I used to use.
I have one of your hand-tinted photographs.
You do. You have one of my favorites.
Yes, it's of an East Lake dresser and a picture of Jesus, which used to be in everybody's Sunday school class. It's that sepia brown-colored picture,
Yes.
which everybody would recognize.
When he's 12.
Yeah. Well, Margie, I know you're the big artist.
Oh,
so-
well, I am the illuminator
Mystics now.
of the Mystics, and I illustrate all their books. But I also work in assemblage and collage. And Terry and I have a lot in common because we went to Auburn University together, and our lives, our work is kind of paralleled.
I think
lot.
so, yeah. Although
And-
you do much more watercolor than I do. Yes.
I do. But I own quite a few of your pieces, which I love. And my book, which is called Bright Illuminations, my work, and then
Where can we see this book?
I think it's still available on Amazon.
Okay.
So,
Or they could get in touch with the Mystic.
or yes, they could contact.
And I love
The
the way
Mystics
you could get in
Pod.
touch with the Mystics, Margie. Please tell them about the cards you made for us.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm also in charge of doing some of the publicity, although I'm not great at doing that. So I did the Mystic Order. I did all these cards, and they have beautiful images on them. And they have the Mystic Order, but they have no contact information. So people get them.
That'll
and
work.
They see the pictures. I do say our books are available on Amazon. That's all I say. But I've done a new batch that has our email addresses. So
Well, that's good.
I'm getting
But
better.
At first, I was sort of taken back by the fact that our business card had no contact information. But then I decided, if you're a mystic, they'll find
That's
you.
right, that's right.
They will find you. You build it, and they will find you.
It just makes you that much more avant-garde.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, several of our mystics who are not here, our attorney mystic is in court, and so I think she's defending someone as opposed to being charged with some crime. But her husband turns wood and is quite good, and she does every kind of art known to man. Just ask her. She does paintings, valentines, I don't know what all. Oh, she did origami, didn't she, out of German money to give to the bride of the wedding she went to?
It's amazing the things you find that you have. I have a piece that has Chinese money in it, I have a piece that has cow teeth in it from a skull that I inherited. And I had it was a skull that I brought from the country and propped up into the pine tree in my front yard. And over the years, the squirrels ate the skull. They would come and gnaw at the skull
Wow.
for years. And finally, there was nothing left but the jawbone with the teeth. And my husband got the teeth out, and he always, any live objects that I ever got, he would soak in a bleach solution. And so I had these 12 cow teeth that I used in about 4 different pieces of art.
Well, my son always said he'd like a necklace made out of his wisdom teeth, and I thought he was serious because he is a comedian in Hollywood. So, if they want a necklace made out of their wisdom teeth, the mother should do it. So I gave one to him for his birthday, but I had to have Mystic Joanne's husband drill the hole in each wisdom tooth, which he thought was pretty strange.
And probably not that easy.
No, it was
Teeth,
not easy.
yeah.
It was not easy. And then I had our photographer that does our headshots make it into a necklace, and I gave it to him for a present, and he thought it was absolutely weird. And I said, "But you asked for this." But
What do you
He's too
expect
young to be forgetting things.
I know.
from your mystic mother?
Yeah, I know. Well, a mystic mother, a mystic son. Margie,
See.
where is your favorite place you've ever taught art?
Well, I have taught abroad a lot, especially in Europe. And I'll have to say, one of my favorite places is Montepulciano, Italy. It's a fabulous hill town. And of course, it's the best hill town. If you ever go to Italy, whatever town or city you're in, it's the best. And so I taught there for 6 summers, but I also taught in Paris and Madrid and London and Ireland, St. Petersburg, Russia, also in Chile and in Greece. I love Greece too. The water is beautiful. And so I would teach watercolor as well as art appreciation and take students. And it was American students.
What a great gig.
Yeah, it was a great gig. As a University System of Georgia professor, it was a good gig.
Well, as all our listeners know, we're a mystic order, and there's 6 of us. But Terry is also a member of a group, and I don't think their focus is mysticism. But what is it, Terry?
Are you talking about the International Women?
No, I'm talking
Are you
about
talking
Art
about
Pie.
Art Pie. Art Pie.
Well, we'll talk about International Women.
Okay. Well, Art Pie, gosh, how long have we been around? Probably 10 or 12 years now. And it all started in Katie's living room.
Mystic Katie.
Yeah, Mystic Katie, who is not here yet. We started meeting at her house mainly to drink wine and bring art that we'd been working on and talk about it. And we did that at her house on pretty much a monthly basis for several years. And our group grew and finalized at 8 members. And it took us forever to come up with our name. For a long time, we tossed things out and nothing seemed to work. And finally, we got serious about it once again, which meant drinking several glasses of wine. And we came up with a list of 4 names. And I can't remember what one of them I thought of was Artemisia, after the Italian artist Artemisia Gentileschi.
I like that one.
I thought it was a great one. It turns out someone had already thought of it, so we couldn't use that. So then we came...
Plus, you can't spell it.
I can spell it.
Well, okay. Then, Terry. We're going to put you on jeopardy against James.
Oh, good. Somebody needs to fix that guy. So anyway, we finally voted on Art Pie. Then we had to do a logo, and we had two graphic designers in the group. I'm a graphic designer, and June Corley is a graphic designer. And so we had a competition, and I won. And I don't think June's over it yet. Sorry, June. But anyway, so now we are Art Pie. We've been Art Pie for about 5 years now. And we had our first group show at Katie's house. Katie lives in a beautiful old house that was moved out in the country and has wonderful space in it, and so she and her husband moved things out so that all of Art Pie could come in and hang work, and we had our first show there, and it was very successful, and people drove out, to the outskirts of Opelika for the opening. We
That's
weren't
a
sure.
house.
Yes, beautiful.
Is it a half timber?
Yes,
house?
it's one of those looks like a German something or another. Yes.
Right. It is a beautiful space, and I went to one of your shows as well. That was at the Unitarian Church.
Yes, I am a Unitarian Universalist, and therefore we had the pull to have that space for our show, and we've had 3 shows there, I think, and that worked out very well because it's centrally located in Auburn. You don't have to drive out into the country to get to it, and so we had 3 very good shows there. And this year, we went out of town to a gallery in Dadeville called the Raining Dog Gallery, and we had a show there. So we show our work, we talk about our work, and we have a wonderful time together.
Well, I am glad we're talking about Art Pie because the last fairy, I guess, to bless this podcast is coming in now. Mystic Katie's here. So she is also an Art Pie member. And we're also going to need her later when we're talking about weird and strange oracles and freaks, etc. So, welcome, Katie.
It's very good to be here, finally. I've been babysitting. Do I look like a harried grandmother?
No.
Feel like
You've
one.
never looked married in your life, Katie.
I look like the grandmother. Well, we were just talking about Art Pie and about the show at your house and the show at the Unitarian Church. When will the next Art Pie show be?
Do we know, Terry?
We know that we can have a show again next year at Raining Dogs. Now, we might have one somewhere else.
Where is Raining Dogs?
It's in Dadeville. So it's, you have to drive 20 miles to get to that show.
And where in Dadeville is it? Is it open all the time? Or?
It's open I think it's open Monday through Saturday kind of thing.
1 to 5.
Closed on
1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Is there a show there now?
Yes, I'm sure there is. There's always
Martin
a show.
Was in the first show
was.
at Raining
Yes.
Dogs, and they were celebrating the opening of the building, and they introduced the mayor, the vice mayor, the trice mayor, and the city
The head of the
councilman,
Arts Association.
the fireman. And Margie's standing in all of her art, and someone yelled from the back, "Who's the artist?" And so we did get an introduction for Margie,
Yeah,
Raining Dog.
that was Gail that yelled.
I was going to say, I think I know who yelled that.
Our queen. Thank you, Gail.
I have to be responsible for these mystics. So, but now what's up at Raining Dogs?
Kyle Braun has a show
That's
there
right.
now, and another potter from Columbus, Georgia. I don't remember his name right offhand, but the art organization that sponsors a lot of things up there is called Everything's Art, and
Everything's Art? Is that?
that's their name.
The name of the group.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's at least. Well, they're very active.
They are. They are.
That's good.
We don't have anything like that in Auburn, nor do we have a gallery in Auburn.
No, we
it's
really don't.
amazing.
Well, Katie, recently we went to visit one of our favorite authors, Rita Grimsley Johnson, and we were exposed to some art. Do you want to tell about our trip?
We did have an amazing trip because we had an amazing host.
That's
She
right.
just put the dog on for us. I mean, so our first best part was that we got to actually talk to the woman whose book we had read.
Oh, yeah, we had read Family Bible by Melissa Delridge, and Rita had met her at some book sales, and so we called her on the phone, and Rita is a Luddite, so she doesn't have a Apple phone. She has some kind of flip thing, so we had to call her on my phone. We could have actually Skyped her, but I think that was too much for the Luddites, so we just called her on the phone and put the phone in the middle of the group and talked with the author, and that was fun.
It was fun. It was great to hear straight from the author's mouth about not only writing the book, but the repercussions when you write about people that
It's
you
a
grew up
memoir.
with. Yes.
Yeah, it's a memoir. And she was born in Tuscaloosa, and I know that's a fault, but she couldn't help it. And the memoir ends with her work in the famous Bryce Hospital there. So it was she's a wonderful writer.
She is.
And
yeah.
you can get it on Amazon, Family Bible by Melissa Delridge. But you have to type in Melissa Delridge or you're going to buy a family Bible.
In fact, she said it had really upped her sales because people who were looking for Bibles got her book, which was a little different from what they were looking for.
Right. Well, also we had a brush with art, and that is we went to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and we saw wonderful examples in the museum of.
Oh gosh,
Walter Anderson.
Walter Anderson. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that museum. I love his work too. And then eventually we got to the family pottery studio too.
Shearwater.
Yeah.
Shearwater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we sort of bookended our trip with Ocean Springs on either side of it.
That's right. And then we went to the Orr Museum, and it's the Orr O'Keeffe Museum. And the last time I went there, it's in Biloxi. It's these silver pods, and only one pod was open, and so they said the other two would be opening soon. And at that time, it was the Orr Museum for the crazy potter of Biloxi. So I figured when it changed from Orr to O'Keeffe, that the next two pods would be Georgia O'Keeffe. Well, much to my surprise, Georgia O'Keeffe has nothing to do with this museum. And the other
Not
two,
the only O'Keeffe.
she's not the
Right.
only O'Keeffe, yeah. So that's an interesting museum and beautiful just to see the architecture. So we had a big art trip. Well, Marion, I know you hang out with a lot of artists, and especially my two favorite for local artists, because they're cute guys, and that's R.C. Hagens and Butch Anthony. Will you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, I think you summed it up when you said artist and cute guys. You know RC better than I do, I believe. Butch and I grew up close together. His brother and I were in the same class in high school, and Butch was just a little boy when I first met him, but he's...
In some ways, he's still just a little boy.
That's one of the things I think that makes his art so wonderful, is that he never took on the cynicism that adulthood brings with it, I believe. Yes, I agree with you on those two artists.
Where are you and Butch from exactly?
Russell County. Butch is from Seale, and he lives on Pohouse Road there, and I'm from about 9 miles away at Jernigan, Alabama. So
Have any of the other mystics ever been to the Doo-Nanny, or Terry, have you ever been to the
No,
Doo-Nanny?
I don't know what the Doo-Nanny is.
The Doo-Nanny's over now because but it
darn.
was the Burning Man of the South, and Butch Anthony would put it on every year, and all these folk artists would come in and sell their work. So I think I must have gone to every Doo-Nanny until the end.
Why did it end?
Yeah, well, I just think having people on his property in that great number was an insurance problem. Plus, I think the fact that they burned a 18-foot tall man, well, it wasn't a burning man, it was whatever.
was it bicycles? I'm trying to remember what it was.
I think every year it changed. Sometimes it was body parts.
Oh my goodness.
I never stayed for the burning. John David stayed one year for the burning.
And John
but
David is your
my son, right. But the Doo-Nanny, before the Doo-Nanny, Butch and a local man named Frank Turner started a little art museum in a 2-room shack in Pittsview. And that was sort of the beginning of Butch. Butch had that hearse he drove back then that was all decorated and painted. And people from Atlanta on their way to the beach, going down 431, would stop at Frank Turner and Butch's little museum there. And then the galleries started coming to buy the art out of the museums, and that sort of turned into the Doo-Nanny.
Now Butch drives a Cadillac that he bought from Leon Russell. It's a 1992 one, and he's gluing trophies to it. And I guess it's his trophy car.
It was parked on Sanford not long ago.
Oh, it was?
It was. I took pictures of it on Sanford. Now, the last time I saw Butch, he was driving something that didn't have any doors on it.
Well, and of course, Butch is always in overalls. But Butch and RC are good friends, and they do a lot of collaboration. I think one of my very favorite I heard about, and I'm not even, probably don't have the story straight, but Butch Anthony bona fides everything, including an Audubon print I have of Blue Jays. He's put bones on them. So that's his thing, to bona fide everything. He takes old pictures and bona fides them. And RC did a wonderful portrait of Butch and gave it to him. And Butch, the tale goes, bona fide it, and then X'd out RC's little name and signed his name to it. So
That's what friends are for.
That's probably a valuable piece of art. Does Art Pie ever do collaborative pieces?
You know, we tried one time. Remember, we had this idea where we got some object that we all went home with, and we were going to do something with.
Right.
Never happened.
No.
And then we were going to do.
What was the object?
I can't remember. Was it a small object?
Or maybe even one of Brenda's gourds.
I think it was.
And
a
then
gourd,
we were supposed to do our own thing
and then,
to the gourd.
Yeah. We have yet to actually make that work. And one time we had this theme that we were all supposed to draw on, and the next meeting came and nobody. We're just not good at taking orders, I think.
What we did do, though, was the piece that we did for the fundraiser.
Yes.
That we put together, Falula, which was a school in Africa. That a woman who was on faculty, or actually a grad student, was working on. So we did that as a fundraiser.
Yes, that was a great deal of fun. And then we did the going away piece when Brenda moved, when Susie moved.
Correct, and Brenda too.
I did. I is one of my object pieces, and everybody contributed things, and I did a map of Susie's life, and we put all the stuff on it. That was fun to do.
Mm-hmm. So I want to mention that in our trip this past weekend to see Rita, I got the really special garage bedroom, which was amazing. And I walked in, and over the bed was a Terry Rodriguez hanging.
Wow.
And then in the living room, the sitting room, there was another one. So I was like, she's
Her
here
husband
with
bought
us.
them, Heinz Hall.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I remember when he bought them. Yeah.
So you're everywhere. You're everywhere.
You are.
At least in the Southeast.
Yeah. Well, and what better place to be?
That's right.
Talking about collaborations, of course, the Mystic Order of East Alabama Fiction Writers are writers, and we write books. And we're always asked, I think people feature us sitting at this table, writing a sentence and passing the paper to the next person. Is that how you do it, they say? And I'll go, no, we all write our short stories and bring them here, and then put the collection together. So the Mystics have actually done a lot of collaborating. That's a fun part for me. Have you ever been to the Museum of Wonder that Butch Anthony has? Or did you know there's a Woods of Wonder?
I did not know that.
I didn't know about
No.
Is the Woods of Wonder at Butch's? Or
Yes, in the woods.
I've wandered in those woods, and
Well,
it
of course you
sort of
have.
wonderful.
We won't go there. We will not go to you. Well, I guess we better. Go ahead and tell us.
That sounds like a short story to me.
No, I'll carry on to that. I'll make a short story out of that. But yes, he has the Museum of Wonder on his property on Poe House Road, but he's now also has Possum Trot, where the auctions take place on Friday night. And one whole room of that is sort of similar to the Museum of Wonder. He has teeth and skulls and old signs and all sorts of curiosities that he's found hither and yon there too.
When I went to the Museum of Wonder, which is on his farm, and it's a shack basically with, I guess on the floor is pebbles or, well, I don't know.
I think I remember it just being a wood floor.
Or dirt. No, I think some.
Is
of it's
it dirt?
But there were only two people there, and that was Mystic Yale, and with my little phone camera. And then there was some guy there with this huge camera just being obnoxious, taking up every room. So I would say thanks to him when I'll be through in here in a moment. Well, later on, I found out that he was from New York Times doing a huge Sunday article on Butch Anthony. So I felt a little foolish, pushing him out of rooms and making myself aggressively with my little photography on the phone. But I did get some good pictures. I have two pieces by Butch. I told you about the Bonafide one, but I have one of his shoe birds. And it's a bird made out of a shoe, and it's absolutely fabulous. Do any of y'all have Butch Anthony pieces?
I do not. I've seen his stuff in shows and stuff, but I've never bought a piece.
And I have several R.C. Hagens, but my favorite is Frida Kahlo holding the revolver. And he painted it on a Japanese screen turned sideways, and I think it's fabulous. I have one of your pieces back there, too.
Oh, good.
It's a painting you did, I think, of Blair Hobbs.
Oh, yes, that is very old. That was back when I was in a whole nother artist group. That was in Studio 218, and we all did portraits of each other.
It's
Yeah.
fab.
Thank you.
I really love it. I always hang it. A lot of my art, I had to sell a lot of my art when I downsized due to my age and decrepit state. But I did not sell that. It's hanging up in I have one room where I write, and in that room is all my favorite pieces.
Oh.
So we went to see an artist in Pass Christian, Kat Fitzpatrick, and toured her studio. But the thing that was, well, her stuff is wonderful, but most wonderful is the new building she's made. She calls the Temple, and it's a screened-in porch. And I think probably she had she got maybe the Vatican to send her copies of some of their outbuildings. That's what it looked like. So we sat there, and then we toured her artwork. And I have her piece, which is also Frida Kahlo. So if you're ever in Pass Christian, try to catch up with Kat Fitzpatrick for your piece of art.
She also teaches a lot of workshops. In fact, she's going to be up at Snowbird somewhere this summer and goes back every year and teaches art up there.
May I ask, is that a C or a K for cat?
K.
K.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another artist locally is Bo Bartlett, who has a wonderful center at the University of Columbus University in Columbus, Georgia. And in his center, it's all of his paintings, and then there's a whole room of his process. When you're talking about bones and just sketchbooks and everything he thinks of in order to put his paintings together. It's a really fascinating exploration of the mind and process of an artist.
And our Jewel Collins Smith Museum has a wonderful piece by him, too, for anybody in Auburn who isn't headed toward Columbus anytime soon can see his work. Anderson Luster, who lives out at Waverly.
In my old house.
Is that your old house?
Yeah.
Have you seen what he's done to it?
Oh, that's behind the house. Yeah, he bought that house from me, 30 years ago. It's a wonderful house. I used to have dreams about it for about 10 or 15 years after I moved into Auburn, I would have dreams about that house.
But you have a wonderful house now.
I do.
In a great
I do.
neighborhood.
I do, so far.
Sitting on some
So far.
fine real estate.
I know it, man. I get cards every week. I get postcards. We will buy your house for cash.
I know.
No, thank you.
Well, somebody bought mine for cash, and that was lovely. So we will go on talking about. Oh, I want to say one more thing about Butch Anthony, and that was I read a little thing about him, and he said he took his wife on their second date to a Native American wall. And I thought, I wonder, is that the wall where I went to in Florence, Alabama, which is called Tom's Wall? Have y'all ever been to
Never heard
Florence?
of it.
No.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Have you been there, Mark?
No, I haven't.
Tom's Wall? You have, Katie. Well, it's in honor of a Yuchi Indian girl who was made to do the Trail of Tears with her sister. And when she got out to Oklahoma, she was living in Florence near the Tennessee River. And it was called the Singing River. And she couldn't hear a single river in Oklahoma. So she decided to walk home, and it took her 5 years. And there were a lot of trials involved there. So her great-great-grandson, Tom Hendricks, decided to build this wall. And a lot of it is stones out of the Singing River, the Tennessee River, in honor of his grandmother. And when someone told me about it, I thought, well, you know, we got a lot of stone walls, so what? Well, I mean, this is, oh, I can't quite describe it. Can you, Katie?
Well, it meanders, for one thing, and I think part of the wall represents her journey there, and the other part, her journey back. On either side. And there's also this amazing prayer circle in the middle of it that you can only go into. I guess you could go into it, but he asks, you have to sort of ask permission of the spirits to be able to go there. And you're not supposed to have a telephone or any electronic device on you when you're in there. But anyway, he's had shamans come bless it and Buddhist monks.
It's
and
amazing to look at.
It's a beautiful place.
It's the largest unmortared rock wall in the United States. So
Where is it again?
It's in Florence.
Well, yeah, between Florence and the Natchez Trace, Tuscumbia, Florence area up in there, and it is.
Is it hard to find? Are there signs that say this way to
No.
the? No. Okay.
It's not
Oh
like
dear.
Rock City, but I think so many people know about it. You can ask.
Yeah, and it's
Anyone.
literally like
On the
less than a
highway.
quarter mile off of the Natchez Trace. So as you come into Alabama from Tennessee on the Natchez Trace, you can just drop right off there and see it. And it's just, it really is one of those places where you feel like there's something very special afoot there or in the air.
When I was reading about Tom Hendricks, he had his great-great-grandmother's journals, and he had some Uchi Indian people translate them, and that's when he decided to honor his ancestors and built this wall. And it really is impressive. The day I went there, it was a fall day, and it was really chilly, and the leaves are blowing up against the wall, and you know that scattered light that comes through the trees in the fall. It was something, and I would recommend it to anyone. Well, I guess I wanted to ask y'all, who are your favorite local artists, and especially in art pie? Well, of course, you can't pick out one because then you'd be in trouble. But
Big trouble.
could you tell us about them?
The first one, I mean, all of Art Pie is wonderful, and my life would not be the same without any one of them. But the first one that popped in my mind just now was Dee Smith, who is a horticulturist extraordinaire. I mean, she's worked for the Callaway Gardens and the Callaway Foundation, and she was also in charge of the Arboretum at Auburn University. And in her spare time, she makes these wonderful ceramic pieces, and she sort of started off small, and I have several pieces of hers. One of my favorites is this sort of plain glass vase that she covered with stones and gems and ceramic pieces, and it's just this wonderful sculpture. And she's gone bigger and bigger, and she had an entire mannequin that she covered with pieces of glass and ceramic that she cut herself, and rosettes and things, and they're just gorgeous. They are so beautiful.
Does she sell her work or just show her work?
She has them for sale, but the price reflects the amount of time that she put into making these pieces, and so they are for sale and worth every penny to someone who has $2,000 or $3,000. She has smaller things, like the vase that I have is about 12 inches high. And, you know, when Art Pie has a show, we all end up buying each other's things. And so
That's true at book,
Yeah.
book signings, you know, or where authors meet. That's how Melissa Delridge and Rita met. They were at their book signing, I think, was at the craft show in Fairhope, which is a big craft show. A lot of people go there, but they go there for crafts and art. So it's not a big seller for books. So in the end, they traded books, and they became good friends through this art show. But a lot of times I'll go to a book signing, and I'll have a copy of every single person's book that's there.
Another favorite artist of mine from Art Pie is June Corley.
I was about to say, talk about June Corley. Yes.
Yeah, she makes these wonderful sculptures that a lot of times they're animals, but they're out of discarded letters and machine parts and all kinds of found objects.
Letters
you know,
from old
she
buildings?
she worked for many years as a graphic designer, and she started collecting type like for making signs. So like either big letters that might be on a billboard or smaller pieces that are actually for printing. And she started collecting those letters and just collected
like
them for many
typesetting,
years.
letterpress, yeah.
And then one day she made her first sculpture, and it was an animal, and she just has kept doing that.
Yeah, and
and
they're
she
wonderful.
has been very successful with those.
I think she's won first place in the Atlanta Folk Art Show.
Oh yeah, and
hasn't
she's
she?
been in the Arts Council, the American Arts Council shows and stuff like that. She's really
And what's her name again?
June Corley.
June Corley. I
Mary?
think we did a reading at June Corley's.
We absolutely did. I was going to say one of my favorite pieces of June's is the xylophone dog.
Oh,
She'd get old metal xylophone children's toys from our childhoods. I'm sure you can't get a metal xylophone anymore.
Yeah.
And that would be the body of the dog, and then she'd add maybe a Z or a sideways V or
I
something
know. They're
for
so cool. People
the head
should
and the
go
tail.
and find her work. Yeah.
The reading at her place was absolutely wonderful,
It
too.
was. And there were so many people there that they couldn't park everyone. That was fun. Also, we went to Winn-Dixie and bought $100 worth of fried chicken, and I barely got the grease off of all our aprons for the next 6 months. But
It was a great photo opportunity too, because that picture of us in the ploy of cooking is around her.
it's in the poppy field,
Well, we have that one too, but we also have the one. What's her little car?
a Thunderbird.
No, the most recent car, the little boxy car.
The little car, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it, but everybody loves that little car. Everybody that sees that photograph of us misses us completely, although we're cute in it. But they go
yes.
for the car.
Well, nothing's different about that.
Was
We're
it
cute
an
in all
Alfa
our pictures.
Romeo, an Aston Martin?
I thought
An
we
old
were around a
Volvo?
Thunderbird. You're talking about the picture that we used in one of our books. And speaking of our books, we've not talked much about our short story book, Be the Flame, Not the Moth. But is that still available on Amazon, or do you have to contact a mystic through Mystic Ways? We don't even know. This is sad that we don't know how to sell our books. How about Art Pie? Is there somewhere people can go and look at Art Pie's work?
Not really. Not really. Isn't that terrible? We should have some sort of a web presence, except none of us like to do that.
Well,
I
your
know, or
artists.
we have a Facebook page, but we don't really. When we have a show, we put something up on our Facebook page, and we should probably be more diligent, Katie.
I know, that's true.
Get the whip out.
Who's in charge of that with Art
There
Pie?
is no one in charge of it. That may be the problem. Perhaps.
We like to get together and eat and drink.
Yeah, there's a lot more of that than there is. Go ahead. Speaking of other Art Pie artists, what I love about this group, aside from the amazing people who are in it, but the diversity of art that's in it, because we have Lee Hinton, who's done both fabric art as well as she's doing encaustic now and painting. And then
she made my bibs.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because every person of an age needs a bib. And so I had Lee make several for me. And I gave 2 to my sister-in-laws who are of an age, and they were not amused whatsoever.
You gave one to my mother, and she loved it.
What?
You gave one to my mother, and she loved it.
Oh, good. Well,
So get those 2 back from the sisters-in-law, and
we'll give them to your
Right,
mom.
right.
Yeah, I think my sister-in-laws always... Speaking of my sister-in-laws, when I was first doing found art, one of the first ones I did was of their mother, my husband's grandmother, in her graduation portrait, which is very different. But and I put next to her a silent screen star, and then I sequined them both, and I framed them. And I thought it was just a gorgeous piece. And my sister-in-law said, "Is that my grandmother?" And I said, "Why, yes, it is." And she said, "Why did you do that?" Well, I don't know. because
I'm an artist.
Because it's there, kind of like Mount Everest. So that's why I did it. I want to mention one other local artist that I'm very fond of, and that's Marianne Casey.
Ah,
And I probably own...
she is a force of nature.
She is a force of nature.
For sure.
She used to paint on her knees. I'd go to see her, and she
Gosh.
was on her knees painting. Now, I can't even pick up my shoes off the floor on my knees, much less paint a portrait. But she says she's quit that now. But I have lots of paintings by Marianne Casey. The first time I noticed her work, she was in Santa Fe, and she was painting Madonnas in those Santa Fe colors. And I used to download them on my printer and put them in my found art, steal it from her. So when I met her, I told her this, and she goes, "Oh, honey, now you come on out to my house and you can see the real thing." So I did, and she gave me one. Of course, she's my favorite.
She's so generous.
She is generous, and I love running into her.
I want to mention Sarah Scott too. Sarah Scott is from New Zealand, maybe?
That's not local.
Well, she lives here. She's lived here for quite a while. And she's self-taught, a self-taught artist.
I don't think I'm familiar with her work.
She has her prints in Mama Mocha's, and she does.
Then I've seen it. I just didn't know.
She
whose it
does the art show that's so big in Birmingham that Beth Ann Hill.
Sloss Furnace.
No. What was the one that used to be so?
Red Mountain.
Oh, I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, she does those shows in Birmingham, and she's.
I'm going to just guess one. The Vulcan.
Sounds like a good one.
It does. It sounds Birminghamish. I love Sherry Shoemaker's work as well, who is a wonderful artist. And we should mention all the art pie people because they're all good. Deborah Strawn.
Oh, her stained glass is wonderful.
Dee Smith.
Gina Touchstone.
Touchstone.
Touchstone. I always want to say
does-
Touchstone.
Deborah Strawn.
Gina does mosaics and gourds.
And she's also started doing encaustic photographs, too. That
Yeah, those
she's
are
had
fabulous.
a lot of success with.
Watercolorist that doesn't live in town.
Well, she does everything. Susie.
Susie.
Yeah. Criswell. She does watercolors
Susie
and
Criswell.
yeah.
But she's living in Chapel Hill now, isn't she?
Athens,
Oh,
Georgia.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. She's our long distance, and so is Brenda Wood, who does gourds. She lives
love
down
Brenda's work.
in the south and, Alabama, and Susie's in North Georgia.
And Spring.
And Spring is the daughter of Dee, and she lives in Opelika. And she's our most recent. She's our young member. We decided that we needed some young blood because all the old people come to our shows. So we thought maybe if we've got a young member, we can get all ages to come to our shows. So whether that works or not, she's been a wonderful addition.
But old people can afford art.
That's right. That's right. That's what I like about being old.
Yeah, you can afford art.
That's about the
do
only
y'all
thing.
have anybody doing ceramics?
I guess what Dee does includes ceramics, but she doesn't make ceramics. Who makes ceramics? Anybody? Dee does those little base buds and stuff, but not ceramics per se.
And Katie is an art pie, Mystic Katie.
Yes, I'm the one who doesn't do anything visual.
But
But
what?
she's the one
You've
that
gotta
started
have
it.
Appreciators.
That's true.
If you don't have an appreciator, there's no use to have
And she
to sell art.
And she also has great ideas about our shows and stuff.
And,
So.
That's true
and
here.
wait a minute, she writes.
Exactly.
Well, writing is an art, and people do not realize it.
That's true. And so she writes for us anything that she writes the articles about us and all that sort of thing. And when we have shows, we may have art, but she'll do readings from her short stories and stuff.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of one of y'all's shows was I went back the next day and Katie read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was great. I went to a symposium. Auburn, Alabama got a grant on the arts, and it was about talking about the arts, and what's available in Auburn. And so I went to a discussion, and every single art was children's art, ceramics, music, the orchestra, oils, the whole 9 yards. Dance. Okay, not one writer sat on that. And afterwards, I raised my hand and I said, is writing an art? Because I don't see it represented here. And they all sort of blushed. Oh, my goodness. But
We forgot.
we forgot that writing is an art. But, of course, Katie has that art.
Well, everybody thinks they can write. I think that's one of the reasons that writing slips through the cracks. And
Well, everybody thinks they can paint, too.
do they? Gosh, I wish
No.
I thought I could.
Yeah, me too.
That reminds me, speaking of artists, the most famous outsider artist in Alabama is a man named Mose T. And he's not with us any longer, but he lived in Montgomery, Alabama. And he was selling his art out of his house. And I have several pieces of Mose T art. And I took my cousin there. And as we stepped out of the car, and this was kind of in Montgomery downtown, but as we stepped out of the car, we were stepping on gun casings. And she said she'd just stay in the car and I could go in and buy art. We go in, and sure enough, I bought a bunch of art, and so did my other cousin, Judy. But Lucy, when we got out, she had looked at this outsider art, and she said, when we got in the car, my second graders could paint that. So the very next week, Lucy is a bird fanatic, and she was taking people in South America bird watching, and they all got off the plane in Mose T t-shirts because there'd been a show in New York City. So she called her sister up and said, could you go back over to Mose T's house and get me a couple more pieces of that art? And Judy says, no, I think you better get your second graders to do it, Lucy. So she never got any Mose T art.
Well, I have to insert at this point, I've been asked to be a judge at various, grade school art competitions, and the best work is done by the kindergarten, first grade, second grade. They get to the third grade, and all of a sudden they get afraid because, somebody has told them something about art and they think they can't do it anymore. But, I mean, children have the soul for it. We're all born with it,
And it's all on our refrigerators.
That's right.
Children are the best.
Yeah, they are.
Which children? Not all children are the
Well, the
best.
children that enter the art shows.
Are the best. One other artist locally that I'd like to mention is Melinda Kreider, and she is a ceramic artist, and I have 4 of her pieces, and some are Santos dolls, which I only had one up until this summer, and then another one came up for sale, and I was afraid I had to buy it. So her art is very odd and so interesting, and she's very much a talent. So have you?
We think we can't leave out Poe Weiss.
Oh no!
Oh, Poe.
No, he's the top of the line. Just tell us about Poe.
Well, Poe is a wonderful artist. He works in every medium, but he's a great ceramic artist. And we all have some of his work. And he's kind of, his dad went to school with us.
Yes.
So we've known him since he was a little fair-haired boy, and a doll. Didn't he and Jessica grow up together, your daughter?
Yeah, they were born within months of each other.
And who's Jessica?
My daughter, Jessica Glasscock, who lives in, now in the Bronx, New York, and she is fabulous, and she works at the Costume Institute as a research curator, and she also teaches fashion history at Parsons School of Design.
And she also has several books.
Yes.
What?
Now what? And she wrote a book called Striptease, which came from her master's thesis, and it's called, I can't remember the whole title, but anyway, it was published by Abrams Books, which is the art publisher in New York, and she had a $5,000 photo budget, which didn't go far because when you're getting pictures of strippers, they get mighty expensive.
I bet.
But it is
I've
a
never
very
taken pictures of
fascinating
strippers.
history, starting at the turn of the century with, the Vive Tableau Vivant, where people dressed up like statues, and that was as close as women ever got to being naked in public. Anyway, that's my daughter. She's fabulous.
But now, what is her daytime job?
She works as a research curator for the Costume Institute, which has fabulous shows about fashion history. And so she's one of the people that does the research and helps to get the clothes that are a part of the exhibits there.
The Costume Institute.
Costume Institute, which is part of the Metropolitan. Well, it's actually separate from, but housed in the Metropolitan Museum.
Oh.
And she has your little grandchild.
And she has my fabulous grandson, Malcolm Severus Seale, named after the Harry
Seale?
Potter. Yes, Seale is his father's name, or else he'd be Malcolm Severus Glasscock, which would also be interesting.
That's right. That's right. I have toured in Hollywood not the Costume Institute, but the things that the directors go and get to put on stage, the dishes, to put in their shows, the dishes, what would you call it?
There's a name for that, yes.
Yes,
There is.
I saw the woman that does that or something.
There's in this huge warehouse are things like coffins. Oh, and they have sugar wrapped up to look like cocaine for the shows where the police shows, and a whole room of guns to be used, and badges from every city depending on which show. And each little item in this has something that can be scanned, so the people who are doing the settings can just walk in, point to things, and they scan it, and then they deliver it to the studio where they're shooting whatever. That was one of the most fun things I've done when I was visiting Hollywood. My kid lives in Hollywood, or West Hollywood, which is, I guess, Hollywood. So that was fun to go through and see. What do you call those things that they gather to put on sets?
Katie's researching.
Props.
Props. It was the prop. Thank you, Katie.
The prop
Here's
master.
another thing about listening to a podcast from women of an age. And, so they can't remember their nouns. I miss mine desperately. And their glasses are also pitiful because I can't read what Katie's. Hollywood Prop Warehouse. Yes, that's where I went. Well, any other artists we'd like to talk about? Did we ever? I know we talked about Eddie Martin because he's a wonderful outside artist. Did we talk about him at length about what he was like? So we've covered that.
Yes, I know we did.
What's the difference in outsider art and folk art?
It's just another
Not much,
name.
yeah.
Another name. They keep changing the name. Self-taught, outsider.
Folk art, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually
They're all the
looked
same.
it up.
Usually
good.
someone
Is
that,
there a difference?
There is a difference.
Oh my goodness.
well, maybe someone that hasn't been formally trained.
Right, but the folk artists haven't either. But the difference is that the folk artists use traditional forms, and the outside artists use anything like teeth
right.
and old pictures, and clocks,
Whatever's lying around.
and etc. Well, I know that our next show is going to be about clairvoyance and oracles and so forth, and before we close today, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the oracle that Katie wrote a book about, or you ghost wrote it.
I co-wrote it.
You
Yes,
co-wrote it.
co-wrote it with Dot Moore, who lives in Montgomery, and it's about Mayhayley Lancaster, who lived in Heard County, Georgia, and so near Roanoke, that area, right across the line in Georgia. But she was a very famous fortune teller, among other things. She was an activist. She was the first woman, I think, in Georgia to run for public office. I think she ran for the legislature. Just really an amazing woman. So we can delve into her some more. But she's just, and Dot Moore is amazing too, the author.
Is she? Tell us about Dot.
So Dot is
She's the author.
She's the author, the
co-author.
primary author. She's the primary author, right? So I just assisted her. Dot is a former school teacher who also then worked for the State Board of Education, I believe, for years. And she grew up in that area in Heard County. And so she actually met Mayhayley when she was a small child and then was fascinated with her. So after retirement, she started just collecting stories about her from various people and had a book the size of, the Oxford English Dictionary kind of size, and of collected anecdotes, and would go around to historical society meetings and talk to them about her, and she was in great demand. Anyway, I met her at a Lee County Historical Society meeting, and we collaborated. I just helped her pull the book together.
Right. You're good at that. You're very good at that.
And I think she is being modest as usual.
I do too. Yeah, Katie's so modest, but we're glad, or she would outshine us. I read that Mayhayley was born with a caul, which is a placental sac covering the face, and that only very special people with special powers are born with a caul. I personally am glad I wasn't, but
David
I never
Copperfield
knew of
was
such
born
a
with
thing.
a caul.
David Copperfield?
Yes, I think it's David Copperfield. One of Dickens' books starts off, I was born with a caul. And I think it was David Copperfield.
And was he a special person?
Of course.
Of course.
He wouldn't have written a book about him if he wasn't.
And also, when I was reading about her, it said that she did not read tea leaves or look at a crystal ball. She always read your hand, and she charged either a quarter or 50 cents to do this.
I think it was more like 5 cents to 10 cents at the time. It may be in today's, but she made a lot of money doing that.
And she eventually bought a bank, didn't she?
She didn't really trust banks. In fact, when at some point they were trying to figure out, maybe after she died, they were digging up her yard and found money buried all over her yard. But she really did accomplish amazing things. The most interesting thing to me about her is that she had a glass eye, and she was very unusual looking. She looked more like a man than a woman. Big Adam's apple.
And she wore a military hat.
She did, and had always had a pack of dogs that followed her around, usually black
Goodness,
dogs.
I think she was a man,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Somebody said later on that she charged $1 to tell fortunes and $0.10 for her dog.
It's interesting that you're telling all these informations, if that's a word. A few years ago, I came up with a project. I was going to write lyrics about all these prophets and oracles. And my M is for Mayhayley one mentions $1 for me and $0.10 for the dogs. That's actually the refrain in it.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's interesting. She also wore a burlap dress and a gunny sack apron.
And isn't it true, Katie, that she would alternate between burlap and a military hat and then something more dressy?
You know, she was her own fashionista. She did whatever she wanted to do, but she did have these odd wardrobes where she'd mix and match things, and sometimes it would be very formal, and other times it would be the more burlap thing. She'd also switch out her glass eye, so that she had different.
It was a marble, wasn't it?
It was, but some of them were painted as if they were a bloodshot eye, and others were just marbles, and so she would do that often and keep people guessing.
Well, we'll be talking more about Mayhayley in our next podcast. We hope you'll tune in. And I want to say to Terry, besides your art, you have now got a new art.
I am having so much fun.
And what exactly are you
I
doing?
am a jazz singer.
You're a jazz singer?
I am.
And where do you jazz, Miss Singer?
Wherever I can. I've had 4 actual gigs now. I've only been doing this for about 2 years. But every week at 8th and Rail, which is a wonderful little bar in Opelika, Alabama, on the railroad tracks at 8th Street, they have a jazz jam every Tuesday night. And there's a wonderful group of musicians most of them are from Montgomery, Columbus. Jane Drake it's her band.
She sings too.
She's a jazz singer.
And how many jazz singers are there?
2.
Oh, Jane and Terry. And so you're the late night. You're the late night
yes.
crooner, are you?
Not too late. That's one of the reasons I like 8th and Rail. The jazz jam starts at 7 and ends at 10, which means it usually starts at 7:30 and ends around 10:30. But that's good for me.
So we can go to the 8th and Rail
on Tuesday nights. And it's a wonderful bar. It's like Cheers in Auburn. The bartender, Tiffany, is a great bartender. She's very big and a little scary, but wonderful. And then Mike, they own the bar together. Mike is the sushi maker. He makes sushi and cheesecake.
So you can have sushi, cheesecake, and liquor.
And jazz.
Wow.
And liquor
Jazz.
and liquor and beer and jazz.
And jazz. Well,
Right.
that's fabulous, and we're going to all try to catch you there. Let's see. We don't have Joanne here, so I'm going to have to ask Margie. Margie, where can you find or contact the Mystic Order of East Alabama Fiction Writers?
Okay, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mystic Order of East Alabama. You can find the show on Twitter at The Mystics Pod, youtube.com/The Mystics Pod. Drop us a line at themysticspod@gmail.com. or direct messages. Our direct messages are open,
So
right?
remember, rate, review, and subscribe. And remember, be the flame.
Not,
Not
the
the moth.
moth.